All right, guys, a little impromptu show going on here on a Sunday, if you will. Um, Basically, yesterday, ended up finally getting a day off work, and for over 30 years, if not 30 years, right on the dot, I'm not sure, we had a local comic book convention in Bristol, Virginia, right on the state line, run by a guy named Rob. And Rob owns Mountain Empire Comics in Bristol. And the shop, has always been on State Street, which is actually the line in between Virginia and Tennessee. And he's moved the shop 2 or 3 times over the years, at least that I know of, since about 1989. And I've watched that show grow quite a bit over the years to where just maybe 10 years ago, he was in a lobby of a theater down there. And I was actually a dealer in there, I think 1 or 2 years in a row. Kind of funny you forget things like that, but that's where I sold and got rid of my huge collectible toy collection back then. And yes, they were toys, action figures, if you will, and things like that. Just got tired of lugging it around because over the years of also collecting the comics and getting things out of the stores and stuff, it ended up the toys actually took up more room than the comics there for all. I had a whole room that was something like 12 by 16 when I was married. Is what happened is that, I had all my comic book boxes stuck on one side of the wall, and then the whole room was nothing but shelves of collectible toys and things, and I got rid of them. I'm here to show comic books, but I'm reminiscing now. Like I said, this was impromptu, shooting from the hip here. So turned around, and back then I think I ended up selling something like a 365-piece Star Wars collection, Beatles toys, McFarlane toys. I held on to like the 80s toys for a while and some 70s toys like Mork for Mork and things like that. But anyway, the comic book convention was awesome. It was, it's grown to where, like I said, I remember when it started out I remember just 10 years ago, it was in a lobby of a theater, and now it's taken up a place called Viking Hall where they actually have concerts and stuff. Great stuff, a lot of cosplay. This year was smaller and smaller, just to report what was there and stuff. Last 2-3 years were fantastic. This year, it seems like the deals weren't quite there as they usually are. It was much smaller. I heard a couple people who were talking that had tables there saying that it's probably where they increased the admission price to get in. Supposedly the tables cost more to get, and they moved the cosplay costume contest to Sunday instead of Saturday, which that's the one where I'm like, oh no. So I didn't go today, being Sunday, so maybe it was a larger crowd today. Don't know. Hopefully I'll hear something. Also ended up going with 2 people. And before I showed the comics and stuff, I used to harp a whole lot about what comics had done for me, not just as collectible. It's always, it got me out there. It got me into reading things because Roy Thomas and Gary Conway and a couple guys would adapt actual novels and books. So it got me to reading a few things. You could go anywhere if you travel to find a comic book shop. And before the internet, when you went into these comic book shops, you kind of met people who were sort of hungry to have somebody to talk about the hobby with and stuff. So you ended up meeting great people. And I kind of thought a lot of that was lost with, the internet and YouTube and accessibility and the movies hitting around big time around 2008, and a lot of people getting into the hobby and a lot of people who are new into it. So if you've been more of a seasoned collector, it's sort of, a little different talking to people. But then I'm sitting there and we took a break. I'm eating dinner and I'm sitting there with 2 fantastic people who I met through YouTube. And going back when I started my videos, I didn't know there was a comic book community on here about 6 years ago. And all I was doing was just making one video for one box. So I would know what was in the box. Each box, 26 boxes of my videos were going to get a video. And that way I'd just, wouldn't have to drag out my boxes. I could just go look in the video and see what I listed in there, and people started talking. So it was, I had a little bit of a moment there where I'm like, holy crap, I'm sitting here with 2 people that I met through YouTube, and now we're at a comic book convention talking comics and eating lunch and just hanging out and stuff. So yeah, it was good to get out and share that with people. Now onto the comics here. Okay. I've had this issue forever. This came out in 2001. This is Superboy's Legion, 2-issue prestige format series, right? And there for a little while, I liked, there's this underrated little thing that I think I would call like the Alan Davis verse, if you will. Alan Davis, before he hit America, was already doing comics in England, and he was working with people like Alan Moore and Captain Britain and stuff. He comes over here. They kind of put him on Batman. He gets on Batman, The Outsiders. I kind of thought it was a waste. I think his style of art is a little bit too bright for Batman, but he's just a fantastic storyteller. But anyway, I had this issue forever, and I never got around to reading it because I wanted the second one. Talk about having something hard to find in the wild. I mean, it's not worth a lot of money, but the Alan Davis verse that I'm talking about has to do with the Nail by the Justice League. He came out with two. He came out with one miniseries called JLA The Nail, and in that, it was Superman was not found in the DC universe because Ma and Pa Kent got a nail stuck in their tire, and they had to change the tire before they went out. When the rocket crashed, there's nobody there, the Kents at least, to find Superman. And what would the DC universe be without ever Superman being the first hero? Fantastic stuff. It was successful enough it got a sequel, and it was great. But this, he kind of does the same thing in this. This is actually starts out in the year 2987. And R.J. Brand, who, if you're a Legion of Superheroes fan, he's the guy that funds Legion because Cosmic Boy, Lightning Lad, and Saturn Girl, before they had their superhero names, they were all on the same spaceship traveling, kind of like being on a plane flying around the country or whatever, but it's in space. And they save them, and they form the Legion of Superheroes based on Superboy being a legend then, right? Well, in this, the very first page, he does the same thing. What if one thing was different? One thing had happened. And what happened was they turned around, and they're out in an asteroid belt or something, and they find, the space shuttle carrying baby Kal-El stuck in, this, asteroid for 1,000 years. So he comes out of it, gets raised by R.J. Brand, and he forms the Legion of how it's going to be different. So I finally found issue number 2. And Alan Davis puts in some, he writes a lighthearted story, but he has a juxtaposition to where when an event happens in the book, it's really kind of shocking as a reader when you're pulled into the book, because he'll throw in a little ultra violence there and stuff like, I'll go ahead and tell you, Cosmic Boy gets his arm cut off, and you're just sort of like, whoa, it's like some of that, 1985 grim and gritty cruelty, just thrown right into a Silver Age book, So it has a thing going on. So I'm real glad to get those. Finally get to read it. I already read halfway through number 1. Like, okay, I'll just sit down and read both of these later tonight. All right, and then I've been showing. I already did one video on John Byrne's Action Comics that he did in '86 after the Crisis and stuff. But I'm getting ready to do Superman, and I was just want to do John. I was going to do a series of John Byrne videos. Just flat out tell you, I got a box full of John Byrne stuff. Namor, She-Hulk, West Coast Avengers and stuff, stuff I really like. And I saw this Amazing Heroes where it actually interviews John Byrne and talks about the relaunch of Superman for his upcoming 50th anniversary. And I'm glad I waited, man, because like this is the stuff that I would grab and try to read as a kid with its interviews and stuff. You had like a grapevine back then of getting behind the scenes stuff on these superheroes and news on the comic book world back then. And the grapevine consisted of guys you just saw hanging out reading comics around the spinner rack at a store or a comic book shop when you would get there. And you're not sure where they got their information, but everybody kind of told the same stories. Then you had publications like Amazing Heroes that went directly to the source. And there's a lot of forgotten lore in this stuff, right? So you can get in there and find out more stuff. I already mentioned Winnie Penny of ElfQuest fame giving her opinion to John Byrne about the Superman stuff before it even came out. Which blew me away. So I'm kind of glad I waited on those videos because now I'll have something to throw out there after I read this and stuff, right? And then sometimes there's these comics that are nostalgic and it's a sweet spot because it's actually a classic story in my opinion. And it ties in with sometimes you just have that comic book that doesn't matter how many copies you have, you'll just keep on buying it and stuff. For me, it's the X-Men Asgardian Wars, right? Okay. And this New Mutant special, this is when Art Adams was just sort of coming on the scene. He's inked by Terry Austin. This is a wraparound cover, by the way. But basically, the New Mutants get jerked into Asgard. Loki has decided that he's, I don't know, in love with Storm or something, and decides to make her a goddess of thunder. And you see the New Mutants kind of being cast across time and across Asgard. And it's kind of funny because some of them fit in better and are happier in Asgard than they are on Earth. And this related into the Uncanny X-Men Annual number 9, which was fantastic, also about Art Adams. But it had a prequel a lot of people don't talk about. There was an X-Men Alpha Flight 2-issue miniseries by Chris Claremont, drawn by Paul Smith. That was actually the prequel to this, okay? So I have a couple of these. I have one signed by Art Adams. And I also found out that, you know, over the years, I've been getting a lot of comics signed. And over the years, it kind of changed. To me, a proper place, in old school guys, proper place to sign a comic is inside of the comic on the first page, right? You know, I've kind of just went against that and just sort of had him sign it. And the very first comic I had somebody sign on the cover was Tom Scaglioli on Godland number 1. And so help me, he took out a ballpoint pen that was blue, and he drew bubble letters. His name was in bubble letters, and killed me. So I had Art Adams sign a whole lot of books last year, and I just look at them. I'm slowly getting them again. I don't like signatures on covers. Call me crazy, you know. But this is like was one of my favorite stories. I read and reread these books and loved them. I mean, I've still got the original. My Uncanny X-Men is one of those. Number 9 is one of those beat up books, and I've been able to replace it with a higher grade book. But what really got me is going back to this amazing heroes, not to jump back and forth, but they talk about the Eisner Awards or Harvey Awards in here or something. And I didn't realize it, but something was going on in 1985 where, the 1986 Max Awards, they actually gave awards to not only favorite publisher, favorite character, but they did least favorite characters and least favorite writers and least favorite books. And apparently, check this out, in 1986, the least favorite limited series was Secret Wars 2, number 1, no big deal. But also, the Punisher miniseries by Steve Grant and Mike Zeck was hated, according to this. They won the award for least favorite miniseries. Trying to find it here. But also, least favorite comic book writer was Jim Shooter, Chris Claremont, and Bill Mantlo. And this blew my mind. And the X-Men made a least favorite on here. Like, book that needs to be, I don't know, I'm trying to find it. Oh, bear with me. I could not get over that, you know. Yeah, comic most in need of improvement or cancellation was X-Men, X-Factor, and Justice League. Of course, they had the Justice League Detroit going on. That was number 1. But X-Men and X-Factor was right in there with Justice League Detroit, man. I had no idea this was going on back then. Thank God we didn't have the internet. So anyway, I digress. All right, so anyway, then we also got this. Now, I thought this was going to be a one-shot, and it turns out there's 2 parts to this. This is from 91. This is a crossover book through Epic Comics of Clive Barker's Hellraiser and Nightbreed. And I know this thing is going to have religious overtones because the Cenobites, their god is Leviathan, and the Nightbreed was all about prophecy and the one showing up or something, which ended up, if you saw the movie, you know, and all this stuff. So this was cool to find. It's called Jihad. But then I found out there's a part 2 of this after I got home, and I'm like, oh my God, one more thing to track down. Also got this. I'm collecting these. These are great books. First Comics did a fantastic job adapting these. Frank Miller's a fan, and they look great on a bookshelf because they're thick spines the way they do them. But Lone Wolf and Cub, I'm not the only one that collects these, man. Guys like Comic Recorder, 410, and a few other guys, you know, they're much more efficient in finding these, and a lot of them are really close to collecting all the issues. But Lone Wolf and Cub number 34. These are just fantastic samurai sword stories. Is basically what it comes down to. You know, just, you know, samurai pushing around a baby cart with a baby in it. Crazy. In feudal Japan or something, right? Continue with my Elric stuff. Roy Thomas, great stuff here. Roy Thomas, this is from 1988 with First Comics. I cannot get over all the First Comics I've been finding that I didn't have access to back when I was collecting because a kid in the 80s and stuff. But here's part 1 of Elric, the Bane of the Black Sword, where they continue adapting the books. By this time, if you're not into Elric, basically Elric sort of has a compassion and more emotional than his people, Melanibone. I can never say that right. He's got, and basically what has happened is that his evil cousin has taken over the kingdom, kicked him off the Ruby Throne. His people are scattered everywhere. Can't remember. I don't want to spoil the story. I'm not quite sure what the fate of Melanibone is, but he's hated by his people and by humans because he is of Melanibone and stuff. So he's kind of turned into a mercenary a little bit due to his sorcery and smarts and stuff, and he's being led around and jerked around more or less by a Lord of Chaos named Ariok and stuff. Just a lot of good stuff in there. So it's good to see those going. I've got the novels over here, you know, collected in a set of four great novels. So good stuff. All right. Then when it comes to comics, man, you know, one of the last videos I did was about how SJWs and pandering to them sort of killing Marvel Comics right now, and how Marvel kind of snapped out of it, and the cancellation of the Angela book, which should have been great because it was so bad, and things like that. You know, every now and then it's almost, I've talked before how comics could actually be an art form of the 20th century. That's all there is to it, you know, making up the rules, depicting stories through art, and figuring out more effective ways of storytelling to capture the viewer. There's an art to the time it takes for you to read a comic, to hold on to somebody with a viewer and not have the comic just fly by, which seems not to be a big deal now with this decompression storytelling. But then there's something positive. You kind of catch one of those guys who has been influenced by the old school, and he's progressive at the same time, and he's sort of like, he's just telling a great comic book story. You know, you get your refreshing to be able to pick up a comic and be like, oh, I'm reading a comic and stuff. And that's Eric Powell with the Goon. And I spoke briefly with Eric Powell to kind of break the rules. He wasn't behind his table, but we both ended up at William Stout's, look at that guy, at William Stout's table, who Eric Powell's also a fan of. And I kind of just asked him right there, you know, he's kind of wandered up, and I was like, so who you like to read? Who's your big influences? He named Jack Davis, Wally Wood, a bunch of these guys from the old EC comics back in the 50s and stuff. I see Eisner in his stuff, and I see him doing things with his arts that's just unbelievable. So it's kind of like this guy is blossoming using those old school rules. And I'm picking up on some of the issues of Goon I missed here, man. The Goon Occasions of Revenge, part 3 and 4. These were mini series, but they tie in with the Goon series through Dark Horse and stuff, right? And then I was able to get one more chapter of Once Upon a Hard Time. Now, I haven't read this, but supposedly Grapevine got around that this was supposed to be the death of the Goon, and we'll find out and see. All right. Okay, guys, once again, I cannot see the comments and stuff. I haven't tried to pull it up on my phone, but I appreciate all the people that are watching, man. I watch the numbers go up and down, man. It's great to see you guys on a Sunday. I just got a few more books to go through and maybe do a little talking. And I may try to see if I can see the, oh, my phone's going off. I'll see if I can see what I have here. Let me go ahead and try that. If you guys will just bear with me for a minute, see what we can do. Anyway, so the Robcon, I hope it's doing a whole lot better right now. All right, we'll see if this works. Try not to have too much echo when I do it. Let's get rid of that. So slow. Oh, YouTube. Well, what do you know? I may be able to see some comments. Go ahead and give questions or comments or anything, guys, while I'm pulling this up. It might actually work. So slow. I hope it doesn't mess up my feed while I'm doing this. We'll find out. Oh, it's loading. It's going to work this time, guys. And we're there. Now just load the comments. Give me some magic. And the chat came up. But I see nothing. There we go. All right, we have Comics Quest, Comic Crypt of Castle Hills, Michael Scott, and Huey's Comics. What's up, guys? And that's all I can see is everybody saying hello. So we'll just continue on with the comics here, and I'll check in there from time to time. Okay. So anyway, now there's this book that I love, Kurt Busiek. Just a great writer. He actually talked to my son back in the day on a message board, comic book message board, back when he was on Superman. I've talked to him and Walt Simonson, a few other guys back in the day online and stuff. Always real nice guys, always answered questions. And I've always kind of followed Kurt Busiek's work, and I always thought his one-shots and miniseries you know, I kind of enjoyed those because he's able to tell a story, beginning, middle, and the end, kind of build up on it. And then he's just, you know, he does a fantastic job on anything he does. Don't get me wrong when it comes to an ongoing series. But he did this book here that I can't remember why I decided not to get it. I think it was because I was cutting back on books, or I don't know what was going on. Then I found out that he had wanted to write Commandy for DC, and they said no. So he took some of the stories that he wanted to do with Commandy and he put them in this. So technically not Commandy stories, but kind of technically what could have been. Autumnlands. I think this thing is up to issue 12 or 13 right now. I've got issue 1, scattered issues as I go along. I'm getting them all. And these may be doubles, but they were $1 a piece at Robcon. But I got Autumnlands, Tooth and Nail number 3, talking animals, some humans talking, and number 6. And what's curious about this is, like I said, well, you know, look at that. All right, I can see Commandy in that, with all these animals got his back to the cliff. You see moose and all that stuff, little fight going on. So yeah, I could see that. It could be Commandy, who knows? Okay. And inadvertently, you guys, I don't know how many years it's been, maybe 2 years or something. I have to go back and look, but inadvertently, you guys have ended up on the journey with me to collect Hellblazer, the entire series, all 300 issues and whatever the annuals and whatnot and stuff. But man, it's closing in. There's still some time. I'm getting Cerebus. I'm trying to get Cerebus 25 to 300. I got a good chunk of those finally. But what I have a fantastic chunk of is the Hellblazer stuff. And what's cool about this Hellblazer stuff is that apparently now I'm getting to where a lot of them are $1 an issue. But starting out, I found a bundle at a flea market where I got a shitload of them of the earlier issues for what, after I did the math and did my hustle, it came to 17 cents a piece. And then I found them in quarter comics, and I found them in 50-cent comics boxes. And what was really cool about it is that these weren't just thrown away, junked up comics. A lot of these were in really great shape. But now here recently, it seems like the last couple months, they've been in dollar boxes. I think I know I got some about 3 weeks ago in Roanoke for 50 cents a piece. So you know, it goes back and forth. But there's a satisfaction with not only completing a run and kind of having something just to see if you can do it, but to see how you can do it. And if I'm paying that much for all these issues over time, if I ever decide to let them go, not a big deal, right? But I got a Watchmen. I get doubles everything. I got a notebook somewhere. But anyway, ended up getting Hellblazer number 100. That leaves, you know, if anybody's interested, I probably will go back and kind of show where I'm at with how many of these I have. You know, I think I'm over halfway with Hellblazer by now. But here's issue 100. Leading up to quite a few things. And then I love these Tim Bradstreet covers. Tim Bradstreet was a guy that I found when I was playing White Wolf games, role-playing games in the early 90s. He would do the covers for the vampire role-playing games. Glad, you know, his artwork would be in there. And what I've heard is that he takes pictures of his friends and then he kind of traces over them and stuff. But yeah, here's issue 180. And, you know, look at that fashion, man. You know, that could almost pass for... you know, this is 2003, but that can almost pass for a 90s girl. You know, right there he is. And I tell you what, I'm finding out these Hellblazer stories. It's good to have people coming in and out to keep the book fresh and everything like that. But there are a lot of them are hit or miss. They really are. And I think it's a matter of taste. But I read some books that did absolutely nothing for me. Then I read some books where there's one story of Constantine where I set it down because it had a boy thinking he was sleeping with a girl, and he was sleeping. He was really on the ground humping a dog with a burst stomach that got ran over by a car. He was fucking it, and I just put it down. Jason Aaron wrote that one. I never picked it up again. It's in the thing. And then you know, I read some great issues, like issue number 11. Read like Hell House with punk music. It was fucking awesome. Jamie Delaney wrote that one. Delano wrote that one. But anyway, then this is 193, and we got a little Swamp Thing in there. It's always fun to see Swamp Thing there with Constantine Hellblazer. So yeah, chipping away at that and stuff. And then there's something that I thought I had completed the damn series, and then I got on here and I had the satisfaction. I was skeptical, and then I found out I still need issue 25, and then I'm done. Secret Six, number 32. By Gail Simone. You know, I love villains, okay? And I don't usually talk about movies that are coming out too much, because if somebody watches this video a year later, makes it sound old, kind of dates it and stuff. But I love the villains. I'm excited about the Suicide Squad movie coming out. I like the bad guys. I kind of want to see the bad guys win sometimes, you know. But anyway, this is Secret Six by Gail Simone. This is the bad guys that are in hell. And here's number 32. So at least I've got this arc done. And this ran for 36 issues. I just need issue 25. And I thought I had it. But anyway, finally we'll have this. And the only reason this title ended was because DC 52 hit. There was absolutely nothing wrong going on with this. This had a cult following. Gail Simone has a cult following. She does. That follows her around from book to book. And she just writes, she's just fantastic writing a series. You know, it's just good stuff. And then the last one I got, I don't recommend this book, but I'm a fan of the character. And I know, I've never really been able to explain why I like this character, but I know it goes back to Challenge of the Super Friends from the 70s, that season where you had the Legion of Doom versus the Super Friends and stuff, man. But, you know, Solomon Grundy, Scott Collins out of the blue ended up doing this mini-series of Solomon Grundy where he wrote and drew it. And I think he actually colors it also. I mean, he does it all on this, right? Solomon Grundy, Born on a Monday. I love Solomon Grundy, right? And then the only reason I didn't pick up this series, I wasn't going to waste my money. I was like, oh, come on, this is from 2000. I think it ran for 7 issues, but to complete my Blackest Night set, I ended up picking up the Blackest Night crossover. Genius of them. Take a mini series, tie it into the Blackest Night, and wasn't half bad. Nothing I would push on anybody, but if you're a Solomon Grundy fan, go for it. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, I think I'll end up getting this piece by piece. I'm not going to knock myself out to get all this and stuff, man, but Solomon Grundy, such a great character. All right, let's go to the comments. That's my books. Well, I think that's everything I've got. So maybe we'll stick around. Thrill of the Hunt. Have you seen any recent sale figures for comics? Red Vitamin Blue is asking that. Yes, I have. Trying to think how recent it was. It was in July, a couple weeks ago, and I want to say it was Bleeding Cool News published them and stuff. Now, Bleeding Cool News is one of those places where I say tread lightly because I think they are the national inquirer of pop culture news of any shape and form. I think anything that they did get that they call an exclusive, I think they got it through shady ways. But, you know, numbers don't lie and stuff. And I saw them and Marvel took a beating with what they had. Now, that's about it. That's all really I need to say. I'm not really into, I mean, DC can have a good month every now and then. They did a few years ago with 52 and Marvel laughed it off and they were predicting it. But the Marvel stuff, you know, you have, I'm not trying to rationalize and I'm not trying to make myself right, you know, but the Marvel stuff, man, at this Robcon convention I was at and a couple conventions I've been to and some of the comic book stores, they can't give away the Marvel books. They can't do it. I saw a lot of people had dollar boxes and stuff, and it's brand new stuff that came out. And now that's not just on Marvel. I saw DC's Flintstones #1, the one with all the covers and stuff that just came out, and some other book that came out. The first issue has not been out that long, and they're already in dollar boxes. You know, so you know, but the majority of stuff I've been seeing for the last, I don't know, year and a half and stuff has been Marvel books in back issue lots. Just trying to get rid of them in these long boxes and stuff, and nobody's really touching them like they used to. And I've talked to like Rob, who I'm talking about, who does Robcon for Mountain Empire Comics. You know, he's told me before, and a few other people over the years have told me before, you know, Marvel books make up half their profits. So if Marvel is sucking and nobody's buying the books and the orders are going to go down, I'm kind of wondering what some of these guys are going to do and what's going to take up the slack. They looked up this month because DC Rebirth is a hit. People are buying them left and right. And I want to say I saw some stuff that was in second and third prints, you know, already. That's grain of salt on that. You know, I'm trying to think where I was at. People was with me. It had to have been at the Robcon and stuff. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens and stuff. And I definitely saw the sales figure for Angela, the Neil Gaiman character they brought over from Image that he got to own and they were going to do, and the SJW stuff in that. I actually saw, I think it was tweets or something, where the people kind of worked on the book were dodging questions of stuff that happened in the book that made people drop it. I have never seen a book with such a high profile character, a big buzz about it, a push behind it. And I remember when Angela came over proper from Image to Marvel, that they really made her outfit look very bland. Changed who she was. She was no longer an angel, a Thor's sister. I mean, come on, man. And then they did the SJW stuff in it, and people just got away from it. You know, I never saw figures like that I can recall on a book be dropped like that. Hopefully it's not a harbinger of things to come. All right, see what else we got. All right, we got T4 TTE DUP. I see what you did there. Hello from Newport News. What's up, guys? All right, I'm not seeing anything else. Let me refresh it. If there's no more comments, I want to jump off here. That was funny. Oh, jump off here. Whoa. So funny to watch myself. I could have a conversation with myself if I timed this right. And it takes so long for the comments to load. All right, Mr. Gretzky 9966. What's up? Yeah, I agree, Mr. Gretzky 9966. Marvel to me is running old fans off like this. And I'll go ahead and tell you, since I'm here, the video that I did, let me go ahead and turn this off if it's messing up the stream. Yeah, I'll answer this one and I'll move on. But that SJW video that I did, where, you know, I finally said something about how it's, you know, ruining killing Marvel Comics and stuff like that. I've got some interested messages, and there's some interesting comments on there. I did check them out and stuff, but apparently this is, you know, I've been told I'm coming in late, and I'm not there to fight the war, man. I was just saying my feelings, and I feel like a weatherman reporting the weather. I didn't make it rain, but, you know, some people might want to look outside and see what's going on with the weather. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, there's a lot of people, there's a war going on, and that video got noticed by a lot of people who really do roast videos, and, you know, they really don't like the SJWs. This is just one. They feel like it's all the same war, because they're saying that what happened in the gaming industry is being just continued into the comic book industry, and they're already predicting what happened in the gaming world is popping up in this world. You know what I'm saying? My phone keeps going off. And so yes, it's old news. We're just catching up in our little comic book community. And you know, we're catching up, and, you know, and the video also got noticed by some actual social justice warriors. So I was expecting a lot more blowback, but apparently, you know, thumbs down is about it. So yeah, there's stuff going on in the industry. I think indie books are the way to kind of go right now. DC Rebirth, if you're enjoying it. I mean, I'm not telling anybody what to collect and what not to collect, but I just know what I like, and I'm kind of, some of the indie books I really, really like Eric Powell and stuff. I'm kind of following the creators, is what's going on. I mean, I've got all kinds of things I could say about how people are being treated at Marvel and how they've lost a lot of the big name talent. I, for one, when you do not have George Perez working for you at one of the big two, that is what's wrong with comics right there. That kind of says it all. And that's not coming from a seasoned old school guy. We're talking about one of the most nicest people, consummate professional, who is eager to please, wants to draw anything and everything he can, be a freaking workhorse, and you don't have him working for you. There's something wrong, you know, stuff like that. But anyway, I digress. This was a Robcon video haul. Appreciate everybody popping in here and watching the show. I'd like to do more of these. Maybe get a partner or something to help me with the comments and stuff. Anybody wants to watch any of this and stuff. So yeah, I don't know. Thanks, guys. Have a great Sunday. I'm going to get on here and start picking out books to put on eBay, and maybe do some of that tonight, man. I'm having a lazy Sunday. All right. Okay, guys, I will catch you later.